We're looking so often for the outside in. Like, what do I need to do to fix this? What do I need to do to feel better? What do I need to do out there that's going to make me feel something different? It's an inside-out experience, feeling safe within yourself, and then that resonates out.
Your horse doesn't need a better rider. They need a more present human. Cassandra Ogier, founder of The Reflective Horse and co-founder of SheHerdPower, is here to change how we show up in the saddle and in life. Her approach isn't about fixing your horse. It's about regulating your nervous system, reclaiming your space, and riding from the inside out. In this episode, we explore somatic riding, equine guided empowerment, and the quiet power of the lead mare. This is horsemanship without the hustle, where breath, embodiment, and energy create real connection. It is horsewomanship. If you've ever felt like your horse is picking up what you're putting down, good, bad, or anxious, this conversation will hit home.
Dear Horse World, it's Cassandra Ogier.
Cassandra, Cass. I can't call you Cassandra. It's
No.
gotta be Cass.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Dear Horse World podcast.
Thank you so much, Noelle.
It's really full circle to have you on this podcast because your work is how I met my best friend, Stallion.
Mm-hmm.
It's why we're here in Wyoming. And it actually, we're going to dive into this a little bit in the podcast, but I would love for you to share a little bit about what we did this week, because we're here in Lander, Wyoming, and we just shot a masterclass, which we're going to have on NF Plus, which I'm really excited about.
Mm-hmm.
Can you share a little bit with our listeners what we did this week?
Wow. Okay. Yeah, well, it is a full circle. That is for sure. And that's beautiful. I'm glad we're going to get to talk about that. So this week it's a co-production for The Reflective Horse and for Noelle Floyd Plus. And the masterclass is really showing the arc of the somatic practices that I offer, which can be pointed either in the direction of personal development or with horses as a fundamental practice for somatic riding.
For those who are listening who might never have heard of somatic riding, could you maybe share a little bit about what somatic riding is to you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So let's start from the ground up, that we want to be grounded in our bodies. So the somatic element is soma is how we are in the body, distinct from the mind. So learning to, or remembering to really relax your body and remembering how to regulate. And that is super, super simple. Like, you're literally feeling your feet on the ground, you're relaxing your belly, you're having soft knees, and you're breathing from your belly. And just knowing that when you do that, you're bringing yourself into a regulated state. And that we can often get triggered, right, by something from the outside. If we're with our horses, we can get triggered. Yeah. And we realize that our energy just goes up into the top part of our body, like our heart rate or, something triggers us so that our energy is more tense. So the practices are to get us to differentiate with when we're caught up in a thought or in something that's triggered us and the energy in our body, and how we can relax and ground and come back to this neutral space where the horses are always at, right? Ground zero. So, the horse will blow out, will, lick and chew, through movement. They're going to shake off any tension that's in their body. So really, we're matching them in that ability to be able to notice when we're caught up with a thought or with something, an action from the outside.
So why is it important to be grounded when we're with our horses?
Yeah. Well, for that reason, that they are naturally grounded But through some of the pressures that we put them under, they become ungrounded because they're trying to think. And it's not really what horses do. So we are really allowing ourselves a pause to be able to release pressure within ourselves. And that also releases pressure in the horses. If we're able to take that out breath, or if we're able to come back to that grounding, to relax our belly, where that is very much where we usually hold that tension. The first thing is that we kind of shut that. And you know that when the horses are relaxed, their bellies are relaxed, when they're engaged, their flanks and, all those muscles are engaged. So we want to allow time for ourselves to relax, and therefore they're going to relax.
So let's talk a little bit about why is it important for riders to be grounded? Mm-hmm. Why should riders, like anyone who's listening right now, why is it important for us to be grounded when we're with our horses?
Yeah, I mean, it's a fundamental, for me, it's the basis of it. That if we're very caught up in what's coming next, what we're doing, what needs to be achieved, we're not in our grounding, literally. And I guess that is the thing, that we filled up our lives so much, and maybe we don't have a lot of time, and we're fitting in our daily schedule what we're going to do with our horses. Yeah. And so we're not necessarily present. We're thinking about, okay, we're going to the barn, we're going to tack up the horse, we're going to, we're going out for a ride, and then we only have this amount of time, and then we're going to, so there's this, we're going into the future in thought. And so we remind ourselves by going through these somatic practices to bring ourselves into the present moment, because the horses are there, right? The horses are there in the present moment. Yeah. And so we're meeting them with that out breath before we're going to get on the horse or whatever. It's like the energy that we're bringing to the horse is going to be the energy that is in the field. And I don't mean the actual field. I mean, the energetic field. Yeah. And that's it. We're having that intimate relationship, whether we're standing by the side of the horse or we're on the horse. But if we're caught up in our thinking, our energy is going to be tense. And that the horses are in that relaxed state, or, they're naturally in that relaxed state. So for us to find that within ourselves, we're giving the horse the opportunity to come into that energy with us, to ground that energy with us, because they're looking for that grounding.
Well, in your work, to me, one of the things that I think is universal across all types and methods and different experts within the horse world is that we all fundamentally agree that energy is a pivotal part of horsemanship. It's a pivotal part of our life with horses. Whether you're doing, whether you're being, you need to understand and be quite, one, aware of your energy, two, and have a sort of command of it. And yet, until I did the TRH mastery with you, no one had ever sat down and broken down how to observe my own energy, how to observe the energy in a horse in the way that you do, in the way that I think is like a fundamental, to me, the reflective horse work, the somatic riding, the techniques and the method that you offer to the horse world, to me is that a fundamental element to being a horse person. Because by being, and this is something that it's only really sort of landed for me recently, which was to be present is to be grounded is to be present. To be present allows you to observe what is happening moment to moment. And to be able to observe what's happening moment to moment, I think is one of the fundamental requirements to having good feel. And until I did the TRH mastery, I felt like feel was this elusive thing that we're all trying to achieve. But no one really sits down and says, okay, what is feel? And even when they do, there's kind of differentiating definitions of what feel is.
Yes.
And what I think your work offers the horse world is ground zero by offering a systematic, clear path to grounding. It allows us to almost lay a foundation to learn from our horses moment to moment. And that is what I think the greatest horsemen and horsewomen in the world do, is they are completely and totally present with their horses moment to moment. And all the amazing horsemen and women that we've had on this podcast so far have talked about the importance of observation and the importance of tending to your horse in that moment. That's what makes them great, is that they can kind of tune in. But I think a lot of people who move through this world as horse people are like, how do I do that? And I think that's what I'm so excited about, having somatic riding and equine guided empowerment, this work that you do, available to more people in the horse world. Because while we title it all sorts of different things, I think your work is actually a fundamental, like almost like a credential to understanding feel, understanding energy, being able to be on the ground with a horse, being able to really tune into what your horse needs moment to moment. And that's how you create connection. And that at the end of the day is what we're all looking for.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
I love the way you're seeing it. Yeah.
So let's, like, having broken that down, let's talk a little bit about when you do not just work with riders, but you also have done a ton of equine guided empowerment for groups of people who have experienced psychological trauma, women specifically who have navigated, maybe you can explain to our listeners, because I want to honor this work really well, and I don't want to use the wrong words.
Yeah. No, I think that that's absolutely it. Whether or not we've had anything specific happen, and psychological trauma, sexual trauma, whether we've experienced any of those things, I think that we can all identify that we may not have had our needs met when we're growing up, right? And then when we get to a certain age, we've developed ways of being in the world that are maybe very innocently, but not really authentic. Like we're wearing some masks or some armors to, not experiencing something that has been difficult in the past. And I think that the horses, humans bring that up for each other. We know that, yes. Right? Yeah. We're getting triggered. But I think that horses bring that up for us too. And the reason that it comes up so strongly is because they have no judgment and they have no opinion. They're not judging us. So we look at the horse and we get this really pure reflection of how we are showing up. And that reveals, if you will, the armor. It really pushes against, we want to make it about the horse, but we know that it's our energy that's really producing this, because we're the one in this intimate relationship. We're the only other one there.
Yes.
So we can make it about the horse, or what's often underneath that armor is there's emotion. And it isn't really necessarily about what's happening in that moment with the horse. It's actually bringing up something that needs to be released energetically from something that we haven't had met in our past. And a lot of the time we don't want to feel that. So I think that that's when we start to clamp down and we make it about the horse. And because we don't really want to feel that feeling. We don't want to feel that. It feels scary. Yeah. And so I think that's sometimes where the conflict can come in, because we want to make it about, if I do this, the horse isn't going to do that, or I stop the horse from doing that. But if we just think about where our energy is, or we actually allow these emotions that might be kind of like needing to be revealed, then we get that opportunity.
And that's the wisdom that I really gleaned from you in working with you, is that horses release moment to moment. So what would it look like if humans were to do that as well? Yeah. But going back to what you were saying about how horses, because they're non-judgmental, And because they are present, they offer us an opportunity to observe ourselves in that moment of what's coming up. So like to give listeners an example, let's just say, can you speak about something that came up this week that for someone that we are working with? What are things that often come up for people that you're working with that are like emotions or things that have happened to them? And we don't have to speak specifically to people, but I think it's really important to talk specifically about some of the things that you see come up in human behavior with horses.
Yeah. I think probably the easiest thing to talk about is space claiming.
Cool.
Because if we go back to the horses, right? Horses that are in a natural environment, it's easier to see with horses that are in a natural environment. And what I mean by that is that they have space and there are other horses and that they have a relationship. You really get to see that they have an energetic field, that they're moving each other through an energetic field. They're not, touching each other to move each other. There's a space in between them. So, when they're moving each other off food or they're moving each other off a spot, their energetic field is much more expanded than ours. So what we might do is I think most people think that their body ends where their skin is.
Yeah.
And so we don't necessarily feel safe all the time around our horses or a group of horses. And so what we learn in the somatic practices is reconnecting with our energetic field. So we actually get to realize, oh, wow, I actually have an energetic field too.
Yeah.
And we notice that, very simply, having somebody walk into our space and feel where it feels comfortable or uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And then we realize like, wow, my energetic field says that I want this person to be an arm's length away from me.
Yeah.
And that feels comfortable.
Yeah.
And then we're like, wow, that's my field. So the horse's field is, their body length at least.
Yeah.
That's their first layer. So your question about what it is that's challenging is that if we are going to claim space from a horse, this is a 900 pound to 1,000 pound animal, right? And we want to claim space. It's almost as if we haven't really felt that amount of energy and us being able to expand that out. We're not used to that. We're used to shrinking.
Yes.
We're used to apologizing. We're used to saying, like we want to people please and be like, oh, you go first. No, oh, no, it's fine. Don't worry,
Yeah.
So we're used to shrinking back. So with the horses, not in a dominating way, but in a very grounded, self-honoring way, to actually claim space from another person or a horse with neutrality. Like it's not about, I want to move this horse. It's like, I want to clear the space that horse is in. It's very subtle.
And I want to claim that space for myself.
Yes.
And that was such a, to me, a radical idea, because when you're taught and mentored in the horse world, it's always about the horse. What are you making the horse do?
Yes.
And you, along with Sabina Berman, who is someone you introduced me to, you're the first two people really to bring up this concept that you're claiming space with no agenda.
Yes.
And that's really hard for people.
Yes.
It's really hard. I mean, it's hard for me to think, okay, I'm claiming the space for myself, but with no agenda. The idea is that it's for myself. It's not for the horse.
Yeah.
And that seems to be it's a fundamental skill that seems to go against everything that we're taught to be as human beings.
Yes. Yeah. And I love the way you said that, that it is about claiming the space. It's not about getting someone to get out of it.
Yes.
Whether it be a person or a horse. And they come with that neutrality. They're not thinking like, you get out of the way. I mean, sometimes it can be a little bit more energized,
yes.
but in a regulated herd,
yes.
then it is literally the neutrality. It's not personal. It's totally, there's no agenda behind it. It's just like, I'm going to move into that space.
And when you do that exercise,
yeah.
which, people will be able to access when they if they join NF Plus or they join your platform to take this course. One of the exercises that you offer is space claiming, and in a variety of different ways. And having experienced the work myself, it is very different when you claim the space for yourself versus when you claim the space to move someone.
Yes, the energy is so different.
It's very different, both. And what I love about your work, and I highly encourage anyone who's listening to attend one of Cass's workshops or retreats, because the work is like groundbreaking, I think, for anyone working with horses, because it gives you the opportunity to really, on a very subtle level, notice the difference between the energy that you emit depending on the intention that you have when emitting that energy. And I think one of the most liberating notions that I received while doing the TRH mastery was that we always emit energy. So there's no point in pretending that we don't. So if we were to, just for, let's just say, if we were to accept the fact that we are always emitting energy, and we always know this, like you can be standing in a line in an airport and you can feel someone walk quite close up to you and you're like, that's a little close. I feel like that's unnecessarily close, right? And then and I think what we do is we move away, right? Or we'll just stand there, or we'll stand there uncomfortably, allowing that person to stand really close to them, to us. And I think that notion is so simple, but so fundamental to our work with horses. Because if we do not know how we energetically move through the world, then that's what the scenarios that even Josh Nickel talks about in his work with us and on the podcast we talked about how horses that are pushy, he believes, are not rude. They're just like, hey, I can't feel you energetically.
Yes.
So I'm going to stand on top of you because I literally can't feel you.
Yes.
And if I'm a horse that has maybe a little bit more needs in the energy department or in the space department, I need to understand where you are, where you begin and end, and where I begin and end.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I totally agree.
Right.
That's it. They're looking for where we are.
Yeah.
They're saying, where are you? And they're saying that with each other. That's how a herd dynamic actually becomes harmonious. They're saying, where do you start and where do I begin?
Right.
And where are we in relationship? And I think that as humans, we often see that as a hierarchy. It's quite difficult to explain it without giving it a hierarchy. But really, it isn't a hierarchy. It's just about creating harmony. It's creating balance. It's not I'm above you. Horses aren't being like, oh, I'm above you. They're just in the acceptance of that harmony. And I think if we think about our relationship with our horses as being more like that, it's not like I am the boss over you.
Yes.
This is, and I too have an expanded energetic field.
Yes.
And I am grounded and self-honoring. And the horse, it feels that energy, and then they feel safe.
Yes, 100%.
As soon as we can, embody that energy without being dominant, we're being neutral, we're being grounded, we just have a right to this space just as much as the horse does. The horse is like, great, now I can relax.
Yeah.
Because you know your energetic field.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's because I feel like they then, what I've witnessed in my own horses is that they go, oh, cool, now we can have a conversation. Whereas before it felt like you were speaking Chinese and I was speaking Spanish. Whereas when we start to understand how we energetically move through the world, I've noticed that my horses kind of have this big exhale, like, cool, now we can talk. Now I feel like if I say something, you will understand what it is that I'm trying to communicate.
Yes.
And that to me is, and it's interesting how you talk about herd dynamics and there not being hierarchy, because actually that's something else I learned from Josh Nickel, is that he actually doesn't believe that there is hierarchy in herds. He believes, and I can't wait for you two to meet because it's going to just like blow everyone's minds. Is that he believes that actually the leader within, or the leadership within a herd is defined by confidence, which is often defined by experience. So a horse will step in and lead a herd into something because they have the confidence that will often be defined by experience, but not always. But the leadership roles or the lead role within a herd is fluid, and it's based off of confidence, not on a specific horse. And it's fluid moment to moment, depending on what they're navigating.
Yeah.
Which I really resonated with, because when we did so much herd observation in my work with you, we noticed that, yes, there are some resounding members of the herd that offer leadership roles as we would define them as a human, but that it's often fluid, and the one that steps forward is sometimes a young and bold horse, right? And then the rest go, okay, are we feeling safe? And everyone's checking in. And that's what I found to be quite just an evolved point of view about herd dynamics.
Yeah, that it isn't fixed. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the only word that for me that I would offer into that, because you said confidence, and that can be elusive what that is, because the confidence for a human can come with ego, right?
Yes.
But I think that, again, the word that I would use for the leadership in the herd is grounding. So it's that intrinsic grounding, and I do absolutely agree that it's maturity or experience that brings that grounding, and that those lead horses are the anchors. And I mean, I see it as the lead mare. Even though there may be more than one, there is one that is more like the anchor, and she is intrinsically grounded and relaxed and expending the least amount of energy and not looking and checking, is anyone following me? Like, she's very individuated at the same time as being connected. So like when I'm saying those words, I'm thinking, if we are like that for our horses, if we can emulate that energy for our horses and be curious about what that energy is, then we are so safe for our horses, because they're looking for that. Yeah. They're looking for that anchor. They're looking for that lead mare. They're looking for that dynamic.
Well, when you talk about lead mare, and I totally want to dive into lead mare stuff now, but when you were just talking now, I was thinking, well, yeah, the lead mare doesn't have an agenda because she's individuated. When you talked about, I don't even know if that's a word, but that's what comes to my mind. Yeah, is she's not looking around. She's not thinking, are people following me? Because she doesn't have an agenda. Yeah, and that notion, I remember being in the Sabina Berman clinic, and she says, claim space with no agenda. Yeah, don't move or push your horse. Just claim the space around you and do it with no agenda. You don't need a particular outcome. You're allowing the outcome to naturally evolve as it's supposed to. Yes, and moment to moment. And I couldn't have done that clinic without having done the work with you. Yeah, because you break down what it means so clearly and somatically, what it is to claim space with no agenda. And it's not easy. No, because everywhere else we move through in the world, we have an agenda. And yet when we look at the lead mare and we look how empowered she is. And that she doesn't have to fight for the position. Right. She just embodies it. Yes. But I think that's what makes this work so liberating and also so challenging, because that comes from within. Yes. So the invitation is to then search within as to why am I not empowered? Why am I not grounded? Yeah. Is it because then it offers a lot of self-discovery, which in fact, your work really invites a lot of self-discovery. Yes, absolutely. And I think that's it. And I wonder, as you're saying that it's very hard for us as humans to potentially want to change or to look at ourselves, because it might feel like we've done something wrong and that we need to change. Yeah. But it isn't that. And I think that that's often what can happen, especially if we're in a dynamic with a horse, right? It can seem so challenging, and that we need to do something, to change that.
but the ability to have that humility to look at, where we're at and where it might be triggering us, and even to potentially think, why is this feeling coming up? Like, what is this feeling that's coming up? Which could be, frustration, anger, sadness. What is it? What is it? If we're willing to just look and uncover it, it's amazing, because when we get to that point, we're being congruent. We're being real. And then the horse can relax, because you're like, again, it's like energetically, there you are. And it's not there you are in any kind of hierarchy, which I think we're so used to that. We're so used to controlling and, dominating or being one up.
You don't need a plane ticket or a pricey retreat to access the kind of grounded feel that transforms everything with your horse. The Fundamentals of Energy by Cassandra Ogier is now streaming on NF+. A rare, intimate journey into the invisible thread between horse and human. This is where real connection begins, in your presence, your breath, your intention. It's for riders who want more than technique, who want to feel their horse and find themselves in return. This is the foundation of horsemanship at every level. Stream it now at noellefloyd.com/plus and use code DHW for 15% off your annual membership. Because our foundation isn't in our hands, it's in our energy. You use the word congruency, which is actually a word I didn't use until after the mastery. And I think what is so cool about the work you offer is we had to do something which I found really hard in the moment, especially with other humans. So one of the exercises that you offer is space claiming with another person. And it's an opportunity for people to give you feedback about how you are claiming space.
And what your energy's like.
Yeah. And I remember being like, ooh, this is going to be interesting. One, because to be honest, I don't always trust human beings' congruency. And I also felt like my own congruency or incongruency would be recognized. It's a really vulnerable moment. But I actually really love the term, because I think that's what drives horses crazy, is the incongruency of someone doing or saying something, but actually emitting a completely different energy.
Yes.
And I'd love for you to share a little bit about how you developed that. Like, let's kind of dive a little bit before we dive into the lead mare topic, which I just love that topic. So I'm so excited to talk about that. But before we do that, I think actually, because it's inspired by watching my own mare, and you were saying how fascinating she space claims with her tail. I want to talk a little bit about how you developed these exercises which allow human beings to offer each other feedback about how they're existing within their own energetic field and how they are space claiming. And can you walk through the space claiming where we face each other? Because that's a really, I think both challenging and effacing exercise for a lot of people that you work with, because I've witnessed it.
Yeah.
It was also challenging and effacing for me.
Yeah.
But it's so beautiful.
Yeah.
For lack of a better word. I mean, I think it's really powerful work.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there are so many things that this activity can bring up before you even start, right?
Yeah.
Because you're like, oh my God, I'm going to be seen, you know. There's so many things. And I guess that might be the way we feel with our horses too, you know, interestingly.
Yes.
And the development of these exercises really were horse-based. You know, it was looking at how horses are and then being like, how can I create something that gives people the experience of embodiment, like to mirror the horses. And actually what I have discovered is that I knew nothing about Qigong, which is a ancient martial art.
Yes.
But then when I was in some lovely, beautiful workshop, and the woman was saying, swing your arms, and feel your energetic fields. And I was like, oh my God, this is what we're doing in TRH. These are our somatic practices. And
Cool.
they were Qigong. So we're like, wow, this is an ancient practice of embodiment that we're actually, experiencing here.
Whoa.
So
how validating did that feel?
Yeah. I was like, oh, that came through. But it came through watching horses, So to your question about this one activity, where we're walking toward another person. But before we've got to this activity, there are so many other layers of finding your grounding. So the way that I like to, this could be a helpful way of, you drop a pebble in a pond, that's the center of grounding. And then these ripples go out, and these are our exploration of our energetic layers. Mm-hmm. So the activity you're talking about is quite deep in.
Yes.
So I don't want to scare anybody off, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, we have to be really grounded. We've also just felt into at least our first layer of our energetic field. Mm-hmm. And then what we're doing is using a rope to very neutrally to delineate the expansion of this energetic field. So we actually feel in our body what's it like to be easeful, but also expanded energetically. Mm-hmm. So we're not pulling our energy up to be dominant. We're actually grounding our energy and expanding our space out. And then we're going to walk towards somebody. And it isn't about walking toward that person or even thinking about that person. It's having our energy or our intention, as you mentioned before, way out beyond the person.
Yes.
So it's the space that we're claiming that the person is in. It isn't moving the person out of the way. So practicing that can be confronting, because you have someone standing in front of you and you are using your energy to clear that space in front of you.
Yeah.
And where you're not thinking about, oh my God, I'm moving this person. There's no eye contact. It's not personal. It's about the space that you want to reside in. Yeah. So, that might be hard to, I don't know whether that's easy for people to recognize that. But yes, the idea that it isn't about confrontation and it isn't about...
which is such a notion. Because when you're standing across... I remember this exercise so vividly in the first time that I did it. And I remember thinking, I had so many things that went through my head. I was like, this other woman, she's not going to move because she just doesn't want to.
Yeah.
And she's going to
challenge me.
She's going to challenge me.
Yeah.
Right. And because my natural state, I think, in so many aspects of my life, I've realized is quite confrontational. Right. It's just oh, this person isn't, I struggle to often give people the benefit of the doubt, right? That they will arrive with the same energy. And that even through TRH, I learned that was a lot of my wounding. Was, could I believe the woman across from me was congruent and in good intention, right?
Yeah.
And so that was so beautiful, because by doing the exercise, and the biggest thing that I was worried about, and which happened for so many of us in the training, was, the woman goes, oh, I don't believe, the other person went, I don't believe you. And you're trying to claim space. And it's so hard, because you're it's so hard to not take that personally.
Yeah.
And be oh, okay, I'm not doing it right. But it's not about that.
Yeah.
Is it?
No, it's about learning where your energy is and how neutral your energy is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's absolutely true. That if the person is not feeling that your energy is congruent, and when I say, I want to emphasize, they're not feeling that your energy is congruent.
Versus
it's
thinking.
So, when you set off, it sounds like you are in the thinking.
Yes.
Yeah. And the only way that we're going to be able to actually apply this action is by being neutral and grounded. It's the only way it's going to work.
Yes.
And I had that experience, and I actually learned this activity from Sabina Behrman.
Yeah.
And I tell this story quite frequently, but when I was in Germany, the only English speaker in this German very large group, and we were space claiming, when I saw everyone doing this, I was thinking, oh yeah, I've totally got this. And then I had a German woman who stood in front of me, and I went to move her, and she did not move. And not only was she so neutral that she didn't even look at me, she looked at the facilitator, and she just shook her head. She said, no. And I felt so intimidated. And I had to do this activity like 7 times in front of, all these people.
Yeah.
And the only way that I could do it, and I can't remember if anyone coached me or not, but I was like, okay, I have to feel my feet on the ground. I have to relax my belly. And I thought about what it would be like to walk through a field of thistles and that I had to chop the thistles with my rope, with my energy. And I literally was just like, I am chopping thistles. I'm chopping thistles. And I, went through, and the woman just moved out of the way. Like my energy was not about her. It was not, about anything other than there is an action that energetically I'm putting out. Yeah. And then I was like, oh, okay. So now I get it. But I had to give myself a cue to be able to get there.
And put yourself in a very vulnerable position.
Yeah.
To be seen.
Yes.
And to be given feedback.
Yes.
In order to find that what I think of that as like, it's a somatic, like it's like muscle memory.
Yes.
Or it's like an imprint.
Totally.
Like, but I find that those hard moments, which are so hard to put ourselves in, are actually the ones that'll give us that imprint that you can then access
absolutely
at a later date.
It's a gateway. So just talking about it on more of a physiological, psychological level. So we think we can't do it. So we both had that experience. Like, okay, I couldn't move the person. So I'm thinking I can't do it. And everything is challenging me in that moment. And I want to probably run away. Yeah. And so I ground myself because I've learned how to do that. And I'm relaxing my belly and I'm looking way beyond this person. And when I actually do it and I'm actually in my body and I'm present and I'm energetically really clean and clear, once I've accomplished it, all of the doubts that I have built up in my mind, they literally like fizzle out. And the embodiment is so much stronger than the mind. And we are literally creating a new neural pathway. Yes. We're having an experience which has, our mind is saying, this is dangerous, this is unclean, this is whatever the hell it is, I'm going to get out of here. Yeah. And we try and squirrel away from it. But actually, it's creating an embodied sense of self. It's creating our anchor in what our expanded energy field even feels like. You're like, oh my God, there it is.
Yeah. And it's a feeling. And what I love is that that's what made me realize what you mean by equine guided empowerment was, the empowerment comes from within, and the horses and the work gives us this empowered feeling. Yeah. And I can tell you guys who are listening, when I would do these, so the training that we do for the mastery with Cass is a year long, right?
Yeah, it was like 6 months.
6 months. Okay, well, yeah.
it felt like a year.
It felt like a year. And in that 6 months, there are 3 intensives that we have where we're with Cass and we're in our group training for 5 days, right? So I have to tell everyone who's listened to this, when I would leave, and I know this because Soliana, my best friend, and everyone else in the group would reflect this back. When you would leave this 5-day training intensive and go to the airport or go over wherever you were, people would flock to you like a magnet. Like you were in this kind of state of just inner strength. It felt to me like it really is like it finally gave me like a physical imprinting understanding of what empowerment feels like within your body, not within your mind, but within your body. And I would always sit at LAX because we did our training in California. And people would literally like come up to you and go like, can I sit next to you? And I would be like, yeah, sure. And you were so in your own energy and in your own, and sort of not in your mind, just kind of existing in your own energy. I have to tell you guys, like, I would literally, it happened every single time without fail. And people would like just want to come and talk to me. And I know Soul experienced the same thing too, is people would just be like, hey, can I just sit next to you? Is this seat taken? Like, and they would just be so fascinated, and people would stare. Like, I would walk into a room waiting for to board the flight, and people would literally stare because they're like, there's something different about that person, right?
Yeah, it's not the ego. It's the embodiment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that really landed for me when you say equine guided empowerment.
Yeah.
It's the putting ourselves in situations to be energetically measured so that we can then have more command and more relationship with our energy.
Yes.
And that's what's, I think, one of the most groundbreaking things about your work.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. And, you know, just, I know you said, you know, we would touch on the lead mare, but the equine guided is also that we're doing this practice, the one you just talked about as an example, and we're looking and we're going, that's what the horses are doing.
Yes.
You know, that is what they're doing. And so that equine guided is like, we've always got the horses to point to and say, so that what you're doing, that's it. There it is over there. You can see that happening. And they're doing it unapologetically. They're doing it with this neutrality. So yeah, and I feel like that energy that you're talking about is that regulated, you know, herd. It's the lead mare. It's presence, and presence is magnetic.
Yes, it is.
That is it.
It is.
But in totally, as you were saying, it's you're embodying it. You're not trying. You're not, and that's that difference between false confidence, like the confidence of the ego, which people might look at.
Yeah.
You know, because you can feel that, but dropping into that embodiment, it's so pure. It's just there.
And that's, I think, what made me start to use the word congruency.
Yeah.
Is if someone is congruent, it means that the energy they are emitting is what they embody within themselves. It's like all their layers.
Yeah.
Versus that false sense of confidence, which you can feel, I can feel now in everyone.
Yeah.
You know, and it's not, and you don't judge it. You just go, oh, you know, the layers, the confidence is only a layer deep. It's not multiple layers deep, right? But let's talk about the lead mare, because so much of your work to me embodies, I mean, you use terms like horsewomanship, you use terms like lead, you know, following the lead mare ethos. So let's for our listeners, can you explain that lead mare ethos that you have within your work?
Yeah. And this is quite new that it has become horsewomanship, you know, that's a new term. And I think that, stop me if I've said this, but I believe that horsemanship has been the lens has been the stallion energy. And I feel like that I can't talk about it when I was in England. I just don't know how that fits in, but I know that coming to America, the great horsemen that we all know, I believe that they've been more focused on the stallion energy, which is fair. You know, it's dominant, it's driving, and it's pressure. And that is the energy of the stallion. And so what we're looking at on the other side, you know, not wanting to polarize it, but just because it's been in that domain for so long, is what about the lead mare? And that she doesn't have to fight for her position. She's intrinsically grounded. She moves into that position because of her relational, grounded, self-honoring, present, safe, and the whole herd want to be with her. So just as you sat at the airport, that's what happens. Yeah. All of the horses will look to the lead mare. And any tension in her body, and I've actually seen this quite recently with the herd at Flag Ranch, the wild herd there, that any tension that comes into her body, and in this instance, it was a very flirtatious energy, like she was really flirting with the kind of band stallion, And he obviously did something that she was not happy about. He claimed some space, and she was just like, she was stamping, and she was saying, this is my space. She was just, deliberately claiming space and stomping her front legs and squealing, and the whole herd just turned to face her, literally. And they were all like looking to see what it was that had brought tension into her body. And then as they looked, and then they felt where the energy was coming from, they all just stopped and went back to grazing. But literally her command is so that they're anchored in her safety and her intrinsic groundedness, but they're also responding so clearly to any tension that they feel in her, and then whether or not it's something they need to pay attention to. So it's just so interesting to see that it's a different kind of authority.
Yeah.
It isn't one that is telling anybody what to do. And that is the job of the stallion. The job of the stallion is to back up the lead mare. She sets the direction. All the horses follow her. She's not checking to see if they're following her. And the stallion energy herds them, puts pressure on them, drives them, and also defends if there's a predator. So these energies are just so different.
And do you believe they are complementary?
Oh, completely. Yeah, I mean, I feel that the balance of the masculine and feminine energies, which are in all of us too, it's just that our society has pushed us so much into the masculine. Even as women, right? We're pushed into that masculine.
Absolutely.
Our energies are there. Our whole society, everything is polarized in that way. So looking back to the lead mare, and I think that the simplest way to resonate with it is that she evokes safety. Her presence evokes safety. And so if we think about, what we're trying to get our horses to do, through the pressure, through the, through dominating, through whatever it is, driving, if we were to balance that with this presence, with this, energetic field, with our confidence in that energetic field, then I think there would be so much more balance in our relationship with our horses.
Well, and I think what makes me, what comes to mind as you're speaking is that if you can offer that sense of safety and that sense of leadership. So let's say if the stallion represents leadership and the mare represents, or the lead mare represents safety, then there's really nothing you can't do with your horse if you can offer those two things.
Yeah, I think so, but I do believe that, as in our society, right there, I think it would be very beneficial for the emphasis to focus on the lead mare for a bit. Yeah. So like you said, when you came to do TRH, it took that time to be grounded, to actually know what that feels like, to embody that confidence. It's not something that you're like, it's easier to learn the stallion ways because it's more like a technique. Yes. It has a clarity.
Well, especially
to it.
now because it's been established so much as a technique by so many different people, predominantly men in the horse world.
Yeah. So if we're going to go in the direction of the lead mare, we do need to really embody those practices because we're so not used to doing that. We're used to doing the stallion energy and not being, which is the lead mare energy. And so I think that it does take, rather than us being like, oh, great, we can harmonize these things. It's like, yeah, but we have not been in the domain of the lead mare. So how are we going to slow down? Are we going to take the time? Because to be present, we have to slow down because we have to feel where our energy's at and we have to know what emotions are coming up for us.
This is so interesting to me because I really do, Sabina's book that you actually, as part of the curriculum for TRH Master, is being with horses.
Mm-hmm.
And when we started doing the work with you, you talked about being with horses.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the first time anyone had proposed the concept that actually most of us have been taught very well how to do with horses, but very few of us have been taught how to be with horses.
Yeah.
And I think one of the other things that comes to mind too is some of the greatest horsemen, and I'm going to say horsemen because they're often men,
Yes,
that are referenced in books and literature, are also people who have spent a lot of time being with horses to the point where they have observed what they then developed into their methods, right? So it's actually in the being with horses, in like the Dorrance brothers. They were cattlemen.
Yeah.
So they're spending 18 hours sometimes with their horses, right? And in herd dynamics and moving. And like, I've learned so much about energetic fields from moving cows with horses. That's never part of a curriculum if you're in a riding school.
No.
But you actually learn so much about pressure and release from a horse's perspective when you move a cow, right? But that's what I find so profound about the notions that you had presented to me when we've met, and now we're like we're offering in a masterclass course, is what does it look like to be with horses? And actually, thankfully, you have broken that down, and there are women in the horse world who have broken down a way in which you can do this. It is achievable. It's not this elusive, like,
no,
just go sit out in a field and just be. Right.
Yeah, it needs more direction because we are not steered in that direction from when we're not steered in that direction from when we're young. So we don't have a reference. Most of our if we were lucky enough to have our parents be grounded, and present, it's kind of unusual. Because we're in a world where, that we're doing a lot, and then we go to school, and then we have to learn, and then there's technique, and then it's just like,
and there's an agenda,
and there's a huge agenda, and then even the agenda of our parents on ourselves.
Yes.
I mean, we've all done it. I'm a parent. I have 3 sons. I know. So yeah. So I think that the reason I'm going back to saying that is because it's so innocent. It's not that we're doing anything wrong. It's that we haven't come from an understanding that it is based in presence and being. We have moments of that probably in our childhoods and in our lifetimes where we feel that. And if we have had that secure attachment, then we're so much better off. But most of us haven't. And that's just the truth. So it's not like, oh my God, I need to, improve myself. It's like, no, I just need to remember. I need to remember that softness in me. I need to remember that presence. I need to be kind to myself in that way, not to be, like whipping yourself, literally. I mean, we're doing so many of the things to horses that we're feeling in ourselves.
Yes.
Well,
as they say, hurt people, and I think the best thing is hurt people hurt horses, right?
Yeah.
So can we give ourselves a little bit more compassion?
Totally.
You've worked with some really notable people in the horse world, and actually before we started this podcast, you reminded me of some of Beth Bears is actually how I found you. And you've worked with, I think it was, you were mentioning in Tim Ferriss's book, Whitney Cummings references you as her equine therapist, which is so cool.
Yeah.
So this work is not just work for, this work is for everybody, both for the high profile individuals that you've worked with, but also for everyday people. Could you share a little bit with our listeners some of the most transformative moments because you've been working with people and doing this work for quite a while. What are some of the most transformative moments you've seen in doing this work with people?
Wow, there's a lot. I think the one that comes to mind right now is working with a gentleman who was in a very, high-powered tech position in California, and with a very, very large team under him. And that he was starting to develop, very acute anxiety responses and just feeling very overwhelmed. But we're talking about somebody who is functioning highly in the world and, being relied upon by so many others. And in coming to work with me and the horses, I think he felt, he shared that in grounding, which actually wasn't really too deep in, he spoke a lot about, what he was experiencing. And as he began to express what he was feeling, and also grounding and us going through some of these grounding practices, he suddenly took this huge out-breath and he said, "My body feels like concrete." He said, "My legs feel I couldn't even get up off the chair." And I was like, how does that feel for you? And he said, "I think I'm grounded." And he said, I don't think I've ever felt this feeling. So, just observing horses and sitting and being, breathing and relaxing the belly and feeling the feet on the ground. It's like we didn't even really do that much. And he was just noticing like this huge out-breath, just this huge release. And what was also interesting was that as we carried on talking, I asked him some questions about what he was passionate about and when he'd made these decisions to take on this job. And he had a family and he had children, but he, in his spare time, he made guitars from scratch.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, "So what do you feel when you're, making these guitars?" And he was like, "I feel in my body and I feel in tune." And I was just like, isn't it so interesting that we get pulled so far away? And I think that's the point that I'm making. We get so pulled so far away out of what it is that we truly feel connected to. And so I think a lot of this work is reconnecting with really who we are, really who we truly are underneath, the layers of what we should do, what the expectation is from us, what it is we want to achieve or succeed with, the competitiveness. And it just kind of takes those layers off so that we can relax and then rediscover like who, oh, wow, I'm here. This is me underneath all that.
Would you call that the authentic self?
Yeah. Yeah. And then when we show up with the horses in that authentic self, then we're in a conversation, we're in a relationship. And that relationship is, we're not going to force our partner to go and see the movie that we want to see. And we're not going to take into consideration, like, no, but I want to see that movie, like, no, we're going to see that movie. I feel like that is often the conversation with our horses when we're so caught up in the intellect is, no, we're going to do this. We're going to see that movie. We're going to have that action. And we're not checking to see what the response is from our partner.
Do you think that the control that we exhibit over horses is, I sometimes, and I've been thinking about this in myself also, like how my own behavior and how I exert control over my environment is actually out of a sense of needing to feel safe. And so if we're wanting to control and do with our horses rather than be with our horses, it's because we want to feel in control. We want to feel safe.
Yeah.
But I think what it feels like you're offering is that this work that you offer and the work that you do can actually help people find a sense of safety within themselves.
Yeah.
And that in itself transforms your relationship with your horse.
Yes. Yeah.
And then I would imagine your relationships with everyone else around you.
Yes. Because you're coming from the inside out. It's an inside out experience, feeling safe within yourself, and then that resonates out, as you're saying. We're looking so often for the outside in, like, what do I need to do to fix this? What do I need to do to feel better? What do I need to do out there that's going to make me feel something different?
So if our listeners are listening to this thinking, okay, well, Cass, like, what can I do tomorrow? I know that's like a do word, but what can I do to help myself start to like walk myself towards my authentic self? How can I be more grounded in my daily life with my horses? How can I exhibit some of these amazing feelings that you've shared? What are some actionable, like, accessible things that people can do in order to maybe embody some of the work that you do and you offer?
I would say first thing is so ridiculously simple. It's like, feel your feet in your boots, feel your feet on the ground, you know, relax your knees, be flexible, release your belly, like relax your belly, and take about 5 in and out breaths from your belly, and just notice, you know, any tension in your chest, notice your shoulders, and just breathe, you know, and maybe even shut your eyes and just listen to the sounds that are around you. Whether it's birds, whether it's planes, whether it's, you know, whatever it is, the barn, just take a moment to take yourself out of any environment that's tense. You know, you might even need to go to the loo for a minute and just breathe in there, you know, because you don't know where your environment is. And just, you know, if you're going to your horse, just make sure that before you go in, you know, go into the barn or go into the field, just practice that, you know, and see how that changes things. Because you're really just clearing your mind and allowing yourself to get into the feeling in your body. What does it feel like to release the belly? What does it feel like to open my chest, have a smile on my chest? Yeah, what does it feel like to feel my feet on the ground? What does it feel like to listen? You know, just to listen to my breathing, to listen to the environment. What does that feel like? And then take that to the horses.
Because then it feels like you're attuning to the way that they exist in the world.
Yeah.
By doing that.
Yeah. Because they're not going to be like, you know, where is she? You know,
it's 3:30.
Yeah.
Where is she?
Yeah. Or any of those things. They're just like, hi, you know, I'm here. I'm still here. I'm right here. Yeah. Moment to moment. And breathe out. And breathe out. You know, if you don't want to focus on the in breath, just focus on the out breath.
That's so achievable.
We are seduced by this beautiful present wildness and this connection. And then when we get it, we kind of want to control it, and we want to have it be our way. And I think that there's a movie that's been made, and I think there was a young woman in it. And it was something about Mustang. It was one of those films in the last, you know, 10 years that have been made. And I think they pointed at that. This young girl, she was like 12 or something, and she was so, this wild Mustang came, you know, they'd rescued it or rounded it up or something, and she was just like, oh my God, you know, she was so inspired. But once the horse had been broken, she had no interest. It was like she was seduced by the spirit of the wild horse, like her wild spirit. And then when the horse was broken, she was kind of like, yeah, you know, walked away. That's what I remember about it. And I was just like, God damn, that's, oh my God. What is it that inspired us to be with horses in the first place? What was it?
Power.
Yeah.
I think it's their innate, like, power and ability.
Their majesty and their freedom. I mean, that's what it was for me when I fell in love with my first horse, you know, for real. He was young and he was free, and he was, and I loved that he was, you know, like a bit of a dancer, and, you know, and I actually, that's why I don't think I ever, you know, was successful competitively, because I was just like, no, I don't want to do that. I want him to be free. I want that feeling of this connection, and I don't want to make him because I didn't feel it inside me. I didn't want to jump those jumps. I felt intimidated. I didn't feel relaxed.
I think there are parts of the horse world that really love that contained power. They love that.
Yeah.
They really, and I'm really inviting myself not to judge that, because I myself come from that part of the world. That
Yes.
Nothing like, oh man, the feeling when you are on a powerful horse and you jump big jumps and you have developed this fluidity between the two of you, it's like full Avatar moments. Like it's the closest you'll ever get to flying. Yeah. Like it's just this remarkable feeling when you feel a really powerful and I did a lot of work with stallions, like when they like explode off the ground, it is like it's an amazing feeling.
Yeah.
And I think there's a part of the horse world that really loves that controlled power, that feeling of like containing power and then allowing it to express itself within a container.
It's very masculine.
Yeah. And I think there's a whole part of us also. That's why we love liberty and why we love watching horses in the wild and why we just love to watch our horses out in the paddock. Like, you know, I love watching my gelding just like gallop across the field in full expression. That moves me the same way that it moves me to watch a horse jump big jumps.
Yeah.
And I think, or watch a horse in dressage, like express themselves with so much precision. It's amazing. But I think it's like, can we have the space also to just really love and like feel fulfilled by watching horses be in full, free and liberated expression as well?
Yeah. And I guess that, you know, that may or may not happen, and, you know, because everybody's different, right?
Yeah.
But I think that my moments of what you're expressing is riding horses bareback and, you know, and bitless and like being on terrain and, you know, up and down and being like, you know, on that horse and, you know, galloping on beaches, but not, you know, like when the horse is really in it, you know, and that amount of freedom, you know, I've experienced that way.
Yeah, totally.
You know, which is, you know, it's different. But I do think that there is, I mean, we could go on for a long time, but I do think it is a very interesting that the way you described it feels quite masculine. And I'm not saying that in a negative way.
No, me neither. I don't take it like that. I think
it's there's, you know, controlling the power is so fascinating, right? And for me, it's more like being with the power.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. It's hard to differentiate that. Yeah.
I think that like
connecting with the power, you know, and not controlling it. For me, that's the high. Is like I'm on this, but I'm not controlling it. I'm in it, but I'm not controlling it. And that for me, I feel like that's my life journey. It's like I'm just want to let go. I want to let go into this. And I think that might be more of the feminine. I don't know, so, right? Yeah. It's just like surrendering to it. Yeah. That's how I experience it.
Well, and that takes trust.
Yeah.
And I think trust takes experience and confidence and empowerment within yourself. Yeah. Right? So it's like, I think being with power, like, you know, it's like swimming with whales or like those are moments that like, oh, they're like, I think that's the closest you'll ever get. Yeah. To me, that's like, that is how you get close to God.
Yes.
Right? However you define God, it's like, that feels like close to God. And being on horseback and liberated, like I totally relate to you. Like I have giggled like a little girl riding my mare at liberty in the forest. Yeah. And allowing her to express herself and feeling fully trusting that she knows what she's doing and that she'll take care of me. Yeah. And like that trust. But I've had moments of that where I'm like, wow, that's like a drug. Like that's really, that's like, that's feeling like close to God. Yeah. You know? Yeah. So, but it shifts, right? But I think it takes maturity within myself. And I think but I think it's also interesting because I think we actually have access to that feeling when we're children because we just trust, right? Yes. We just trust. Totally. And then we become.
Especially an animal. Especially.
Okay. So to wrap up this podcast, I always ask everybody the same series of questions, which I'm excited to ask you. Yeah. And just answer the first thing that comes to your mind.
Okay. I'm ready.
If you could read one book to the horse world, what would it be?
Ooh. Listen Like a Horse by Kerry Lake.
Cool. Who is the most iconic horse in history?
That's a hard one.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's so many. But I would say I've been the most inspired by the wild Mustang.
Cool. So as a collective, like as a symbol.
Yeah.
The wild Mustang.
I think so, and particularly the lead mare.
I love that.
Yeah.
What is the most undervalued skill as a rider or as a horse person?
Presence.
Good answer. Who do you think is the greatest horseman or horsewoman in history?
It's a hard one.
These aren't easy questions.
No. Yeah. I've been inspired by so many people, but I think that I've learnt the most from Sabina Behrman.
Beautiful. And the last question, mares, stallions, or geldings?
Oh gosh. I mean, I love geldings. I've always been a gelding person. I have 3 sons. Not that they're gelded in any way, but yeah, I love geldings. But I've really learnt to love the mares. And I don't know that many stallions. I'm very admiring of stallions, but I've yet to be in their aura.
Thank you so much for coming on the podcast, Cass.
Thank you so much for being open and so, I really feel your presence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
That's a great compliment.
Yeah.